let's move on and look at the training regulations. And the way I've done with the training regulations is to split them into two parts. So we're going to start by looking at part one of the training regulations. Now, the ICAS training process, it's a learner-centered training. The focus of the training the goal rather, is to get the learner to be competent at the end of their training process. So whatever rules that have been put in place, whatever requirements have been put in place, is to help and work with the learner for them to become competent at the end. It's obviously very important for us to understand that unless you're producing competent CAs, there is a threat that the CA brand may not live up to the requirements in how the market looks at us, and how regulators looks at us, as well as how the government looks at us. So looking at the full-time, the contract that a trainee needs to get into. So what's important to note is the ICAS contract has to be a full-time contract, which means the training for ICAS cannot be done by someone who is working part-time or someone who is a seasonal worker. The contract is basically a full-time contract. And when you talk about a full-time contract, these are the things that we look at. We look at a bare minimum, a trainee needs to be working 7 hours a day. They also need to commit to 5 days a week. And in case of overtime, it is allowed, but ICAS refers that to the labor laws in how overtime is administered. Now, and look at the ICAS contract versus the employment contract. Now, what's important to note is when you get into an ICAS contract, it does not exist outside the employment contract. So first and foremost, for there to be an ICAS contract, there has to be an employment relationship between the trainer and the training office. So the employment contract provides the framework, or rather the foundation on which the ICAS contract then exists. Now what this means is, one of the key things that ICAS is going to look at when it gives a train before a trainee is given a training contract is, you cannot have an employment contract which is shorter than the ICAS contract. Because at that point, there's a risk that when the employment contract is finished, if it's not renewed, there is no way you can complete the ICAS contract. So what are the requirements of a training contract? Like I said, the first and foremost, is an employment contract with an accredited training office. Now, what also becomes a very important requirement is, for a trainee to get into the ICAS training contract, they need to be registered for an ICAS accredited educational program. Now, the minimum educational program that is accredited by ICAS is a degree program. So a trainee, for them to have an ICAS contract, there has to be registered for an accredited degree, which means there has to be accredited for an accounting degree by a university that is recognized with ICAS. Simply put, someone who is doing a marketing degree cannot get into an ICAS contract. Someone who's doing an arts degree, they cannot get into that contract. Now, ICAS understands that sometimes a recruitment can happen where someone is not yet enrolled for the particular program that is required by ICAS. ICAS gives the trainee 10 months to register for an ICAS accredited training program. The same thing happens even with CTA. Some people can get into the CTA bridging course, and they're coming from different professions. They have to register for the bridging course within 10 months of getting into the training contract. Let's look at probation. The ICAS training contract also acknowledges the importance of probation when someone gets into the contract, and I think it's in line with the different labor law requirements of a probation of 3 months. Now, what's important to note as well is the probation becomes part of the training contract. Now, what happens if someone was already under the employment and they're coming from a different department? Recruitment from inside still requires probation. So if you're working in marketing and you're now get a place where you need to start doing articles, there's need for 3 months probation in that particular process.